Any parents that would have their child have a transgender surgery done on them, any parent that would do that, they just need to be shot in the back of the head.
Right.
They need to be convicted in trial and immediately shot in the back of the head. Okay? And then we can string them up above a bridge. And so that the public can see the consequences of that kind of wickedness.
Yeah.
And so there should be no excuse to not put these people to death. No excuse whatsoever.
I want to be very clear. I very much hate having to talk about, let alone show that sort of person on the show. And sometimes I'm very conflicted about platforming that sort of murderous hatred. At the same time, it exists. There's a number of churches that are affiliated with this movement. We'll talk about who that person is. And we need to know that there are people who are campaigning religiously on the violent execution of those who assist their family members in getting medical care. It exists, they're out there, they have followers, and I don't know, is it better that they're just growing in the darkness? I don't know. But that right there is Jason Graber, a new independent fundamentalist Baptist preacher at Sure Foundation Baptist Church in Spokane, Washington. He goes on to say, there are very, very few people out there in the world today that are actually fighting the spiritual fight. He says he doubts other preachers are willing to say that these child molesters, these child bushers, he uses the F word, all the LGBTQ people that desire strange flesh, that they should all be put to death in a public execution by the government. He's previously called gay people AIDS dispensers. He says a lot of really violent stuff. He says that LGBTQ stands for let God burn them quickly. One would think that if God did find members of the LGBTQ community so reprehensible, that since he's the creator of everything, he could probably deal with it and wouldn't need little troglodytes like Graber to go around murdering people. But Graber doesn't have faith in his God, and so he thinks it's up to them to enact his will. Also, I'm fairly certain, although I am an atheist, that there's some stuff in their religion that seems pretty core about thou shalt not kill. One would think that that would be specific and not open to that much misinterpretation, but Christians have always found ways around that little thing. So anyway, like I said, Maz, I hate even showing this sort of stuff, but there's 30 churches apparently that are affiliated with that group. And this is the sort of stuff that they're preaching.
Usually when you do dive into these people's backgrounds, whether it's like an article or a documentary, you see that there was a lot of volatility in their childhood. They either were raised by very close-minded bigots, or they had something really bad happen in their lives. And then it's unfortunate that they, rather than improving themselves, they turn around and they go after people to victimize. And the fact that we're having this conversation in 2023 just blows my mind. I mean, it's like, if this were the year 2, you might think, all right, people don't know anything and they're gonna spew something stupid like that. But we're in 2023. The world has changed. So whether you like it or not, the LGBTQ community is vibrant, it's here, and you got to deal with it. And a lot of times these people come out, it turns out that they have LGBTQ, they've had experiences or something, and sometimes they're hiding that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff to delve into with somebody like this. What I think is clearly hopefully this is a minority of people, but what happens is this kind of hate then creeps into and spews its way into others who might not say, oh, we need to kill these people, but they will say, oh, did you hear they're teaching stuff in school and they're grooming our kids, and there's all this drag queen book hour. And my response to those people is I always go, when was the last time a drag queen or a transgender person did anything to harm you or do anything bad to you? When was it? Versus when was the last time somebody who was closed-minded and a bigot did something to harm you or attacked you in one way or another? If you really think about that stuff, you will see that the bigger threat to America are people that are bigots and closed-minded versus members of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, none of these people have. There's no personal experiences based on. There are millions of Americans right now that are just like quivering with rage about trans people. They've never met a trans person. They've had no experience with trans people. They 2 years ago never thought about trans people. It had no effect on their life. They were worried about their mortgage. They were worried about like their shocks going out on their car and getting a surprise $1,300 payment. They were worried about that stuff. But now they've been convinced, no, actually, although you have no experience with trans people, they're actually lurking behind you right now. And you should be terrified of them. And so,
John, you're too kind. John, you're too kind. They weren't worried about their mortgage and their shocks. They were worried about Mexicans 2 years ago. And 3 years ago, they were worried about Muslims. And 4 years ago, it was black people. And now it's transgender. True. So, hey, there you go. Every year, it's a new group.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of the pressure off of the previous out groups. I don't know which group out there should be worried that they're on deck right now, but they will be elevated to the position of being attacked. By the way, I also want to mention this guy who's said a lot of crazy stuff. But by the way, this one, Daniel Kutsars, another preacher, apparently affiliated with this or whatever. So he apparently said that Duolingo had been infiltrated by homosexuals. Duolingo is a language learning app, and it sometimes has examples that has same-sex couples, and that apparently means that the app has been infiltrated by homosexuals. Anyway, this individual Hema Meta.
The fact that he's at least trying to broaden his horizons by learning another language.
I know.
That's pretty funny to me.
Yeah. He's trying to figure out how to say "stone the homosexuals" in more languages. But anyway, so this account on Twitter, Hema Meta, tweeted out one of these videos of them saying these crazy things. And the Sure Foundation Baptist Church, the church that Graber is affiliated with, replied, "Oh, I was wondering why I was getting death threats again this morning out of the blue. I bet Maja Beta, I think it's just mocking his name, is behind this. Sure enough, after sifting through your sea of Christian hate posts, there it was, your dog whistle of death. Who is really inciting violence?" Back on March 15th. Hema Meta points out, all I did was quote you. All he did was, he put the quote. I guess he called him a hate preacher. That's the most opining that he did. But take a look at that. Assuming that's Graber who's responding, and it sure sounds like it's the first person for this organization. He's like, how dare you lead to me getting death threats? 2 months later, shoot them in the back of the head. Man. A little bit self-interested, his approach to stopping the violent threats.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.